Hey everyone, so this is my organizational flow chart. So I worked for USD 373 this last year, still will this next year. Um, so I want to apologize up front. I do have my puppy down here. Hopefully she's quiet and just lays there, but she might cause a distraction. I'm sorry if she does. Okay. She also might make me stutter a little bit just because I'm worried about what she's going to be doing. She's a chewer. She's like a little teenager. But anyways, so I have my flow chart here. So in USD 373, so of Newton, Kansas, we have the Board of Education up at the top. They're like the head of obviously our district. They appointed our superintendent, um, and so they work directly together. The superintendent kind of makes the decisions a little bit, but the Board of Education votes on a lot of those decisions and kind of says yes or no to some of the stuff the superintendent wants to do. It kind of keeps the superintendent grounded a little bit, but also um, the Board of Education is just involved to kind of help provide the best opportunity for the community of Newton kids because those don't change as often as sometimes the superintendents do, I would say. So I think that's how a lot of school districts are. And under the Board of Education, you also have the board clerk, the board treasurer, and the board attorney, and they all cohesively work together with the superintendent and the superintendent with all of them to make the best decisions. I would say that specifically for the superintendent currently right now, um, Mr. Van Rankin, I think he would say that he is not above any of them. Even the board clerk, board treasurer, board attorney, he's very much a team person. So um, I would say the yellows are the top of the chain of command, and that's what I kind of organized as we go throughout yellow, green, then blue. So under the superintendent and the board of education, we have the assistant superintendent. You can see I'm going to use my mouse a little bit. See right there on the right side. That is the assistant superintendent for instructional services. So that is the assistant to the superintendent, um, or the assistant superintendent, not to the superintendent. But then the superintendent, I didn't put it on here, but has his own actual office assistant or receptionist type person to help coordinating things and organization of different events and everything that's going on with the superintendent's schedule. But so then there's the assistant superintendent that has their own individual role that kind of splits up some of the duties of the superintendent to help um, the superintendent out, as well as just the district in general. And they focus on the instructional services, so curriculum is a big one for them. And then we have the director of Harvey County Special Education Cooperative. We have the director of business services. We have the director of human resources, the director of technology, director of food services, director of maintenance and grounds, director of transportation. Those are all the green. They're the secondary chain of command. They each have their own individual department, but they were appointed to that head of the department, and they meet with the board of education, the superintendent, the board attorney, the board clerk, the board treasurer. Everyone meets together, and all the directors do as the head of kind of the leadership role of the department. So each of those, so like the director of business services, all the greens have their own assistants and people under them as well. But I didn't want to go into too much detail. They all have their own assistants. They all have their own receptionists. They all have people under them in different roles. So they do that. And then under the second chain of command would be the specific buildings and their admin. So the pre-K admin, the elementary admin, the 5 through 6 center admin, the middle school admin, the high school admin. So that includes principal, assistant principal, secretaries, counselors, SO officer, all of those. And then I would put under them, I'd put the individual staff for each of those buildings. So the pre-K staff, elementary staff, 5th through 6th grade center staff, the middle school staff, and the high school staff, each under those their selective advisors or admins. So I would say that this is a general synopsis. This is not every single role in the building or in the district, but I didn't think I had a lot of time or space on the paper to be able to do something like that. So we're on this visual. So I felt like this was the best way to kind of go over a general synopsis of what the district chain of command kind of looks like, the organizational flow chart is. So with that being said, I kind of see our district. I have some notes over here off to the left, so that's why I'm looking over there. I kind of see our district having a centralized organizational structure, meaning there are very clear responsibilities for each role with subordinate roles kind of defaulting. Hang on, real quick. I'm going to get some notifications turned off. Make sure we don't have any more of those. I apologize for that. But a centralized organizational structure. Everyone has clear responsibilities within each role, and they each have their own subordinate roles defaulting to the guidance of their superiors. So, like the director of transportation has a bunch of people under them, but they all report to the director of transportation, and then he or she reports to the superintendent. Um, that way, not everyone is going to the top of the chain of command. I feel like this is how most districts work. And that way, if they're having problems with one of the buses not running, the superintendent's not the first person being told. That would be, at the end of the week, let's figure out what kind of went wrong. We can tell the superintendent then, as long as they're not major things. So I feel like that's just a good example. So I feel like a lot of districts go that route. Overall, I'd consider my district and most other public ones as functional operating structures. I think by dividing the organization into departments, or in this case, directors, or individual buildings, we have multiple departments that operate different parts of the organization. So our different departments would be the business services department, the human resources department. You can see on my screen the technology department. That's what I'm kind of going at, the food service department, with each individual department. And then I would consider the pre-K admin, the elementary admin, the fifth and sixth center admin, the middle school and the high school. Those are all individual departments as well. So I would generally say we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, generally about 14 different departments in our district. And that way, they all kind of have their own responsibilities within the organization, but they all report to the superintendent and the Board of Education to then report to the state, technically. So the Board of Education is kind of like our community members that are looking out for the overall well-being of the district. They're good for, like I said earlier, being appointed. Maybe they last longer than the superintendents do. Their overall goal is to support the school systems in their respective community, their county, their city, or town. I think that's a good opportunity to have community members and leaders in charge, or at least aware of what's going on in the district. The yellow and green blocks all share common space or building. Most of them are probably in the McKinley administration building, but that'd be for the directors. But each director has their own individual office per se, or building, going wherever their respective role is to carry out their responsibilities. So, like the director of transportation has an office at the administration building, but then also has the transportation barn of all the buses in their area, and facilities and stuff would have their own. So it's just kind of a good example of just each of these green ones all have their own respective offices and building space to continue their following through with the responsibilities and that they have for their role. Then each of the blue blocks have their own schools and classrooms and offices to operate and maintain. I believe that as a functional structure, I believe that because of the role we each play in the overall goal of having student success academically, collectively we all divide into our own departments, quote unquote, and accomplish our individual work, and occasionally meet up with other departments to go over anything that's successful or anything that's failing, and kind of figure out what we can improve on. And I feel like we all report to our superiors at each level of the chain of command, and the information gets shared up the chain of command as with what action needs to be shared. Very rarely do we kind of skip ahead of the chain of command. I was kind of saying that earlier, especially as like the lowest on the totem pole. There's no reason. I mean, there's different circumstances, obviously, but like there's no reason someone at the middle school staff. So I'm at the middle school. Say I have a problem at the middle school with a parent. I don't need to go to the superintendent or the Board of Education to deal with that parent, unless other steps or measures have been taken. Then I don't think I have no reason to tell them that there's something going wrong with the parent conflict. So that's why I would report up to my next level up, which would be the middle school admin. And then if they can't figure out, then they move up to probably the assistant superintendent and then the superintendent. We'll figure out that way. But you kind of want to stick with the chain of command a little bit, and moving up slowly throughout, rather than going straight above everyone, and going up to the top. I think that's a great method. I think it works good for school systems. I think it allows for the proper amount of support, for a superintendent to have their goals pushed throughout the district, with collective minds that kind of think the same way and are pushing towards the same goals, or goals that are going to help accomplish the original goal of the superintendent. So, as a functional, um, structure, I believe that that is our the best way to describe, um, the type of organization that USD 373 is. So, thank you for listening. That is all.